Anyway, thanks, Mary, for joining me. Would you just take a moment just to tell us who you are and what sort of business you're running?
Okay, thanks, Sandra. I'm Mary Waring. I'm a chartered financial planner, and my business is Wealth for Women, and it's financial advice for women going through divorce. And actually, I'm coming up to, I think it's next week, my 8th birthday for the firm, which is quite nice. It's interesting, isn't it? Because a lot of people in the industry, especially those of my age, have been in it forever. But I'm actually a reasonable newbie into the industry, only having been in it for 8 years.
Oh, so you started this business, and this was your first business then?
Yes. Yeah. So prior to that, I'm actually a chartered accountant. So I was working as a chartered accountant, well, up until 2005. I then wanted to do something different, decided I didn't want to be employed anymore. I wanted to go off and try something on my own. And initially I did mortgage advice. And it was at a time when the mortgage market was booming. And of course, then we hit the global financial crisis and the property market collapsed, the mortgage market collapsed. And I'd always been quite keen to be a financial advisor, but the hundreds of hours on exams put me off. And my mortgage business was really successful. So I thought, well, I've got a mortgage business. Why do I want to spend hundreds of hours studying? And then, of course, when the market collapsed, and actually I had a lot of free time, I thought, oh, well, I might as well just get on with it. And actually, I just put my head down and I went from, I think, over the period of probably something like 18 months, I went from being a mortgage advisor to chartered. I just thought I'm just going to put my head down and just go on and do all the exams, because once you get in that exam mode, you can keep going. It's when you stop and you then have to find time for study that it gets really tricky. So I just thought, just put my head down and just get on with it.
And how did you decide on your client base?
How did I decide?
On your client base?
Well, I'd always been quite keen to do advice for women, and that's because there is so few female advisors. The figures I've seen recently, about 18% of advisors are female. And I think when I was looking, it was nearer the 10%. And I had just thought, well, if you're female and you just feel more comfortable with a female advisor, well, they're in such short supply. So I thought, well, I might as well target that market. And it just so happened that all of my early clients, well, the majority of my early clients, females going through divorce, their husband had looked after the finance. And so they were lost. They were feeling really vulnerable. They had no idea about the money. They didn't know how much anything cost, how much it cost to run the household, because the husband looked after it. And I thought, well, this is such an obvious market, because these women need more than just financial advice. They need looking after, they need to be given confidence, they need to be reassured that they've not been dimmed by making the decision they made, that the husband looked after everything. Because of course, at the time when you're married, it's quite sensible that one person does it. Why would you both do it? But the problem is, if you haven't done it and you also don't know anything about it, that's when it gets hard if you hit divorce. And of course, there's nothing that says males can't offer this service for females. But I thought, well, if you're female, you're just feeling vulnerable and you need looking after, I'm going to set my stall out and say, well, come to me and I'll look after you. And it's really interesting because I get so many inquiries straight from the web, and I haven't done anything clever with Google ads or anything like that. No clever SEO. I've just written my website, well, this is what I do. And I actually get a huge number of inquiries, because I think a lot of women, they're searching female advisor divorce and they get me. So it's turned out more by luck really than necessarily decision right at the beginning to be perfect place for me, because I just feel I can really look after these clients and offer a lot.
Well, it's obviously I think it must be my microphone, but I was saying there's obviously a need for that sort of financial advice for women.
Yeah, there is. And for women who, because they're feeling quite vulnerable, or a lot, I mean, these are their words, I would never say it, they feel stupid. They feel stupid that their husband did everything and they didn't play any part in it. And they feel stupid that they just don't know what's going on. So it's really hard to admit that to anyone. And actually, a lot of them just feel more comfortable admitting to a female, especially when you then say, well, look, actually, all of my clients are in this situation. Everybody I know has done this. They're all feeling like you, but it's fine. They get their confidence, they get used to it. You know, you're going to be okay.
How have you been conducting client meetings over this COVID period, given that your clients are probably very vulnerable, you know, and probably want to be face to face with you, you know, huggy or whatever? But how do you do that virtually?
Well, all my meetings are on Zoom. So if you think, compared to the alternative of having a phone call, Zoom is great. You know, you can share a screen, I can pull up the cash flow and everything, but it's not my choice at all. You know, I've seen a lot of advisors saying that when we get out of lockdown, they've loved Zoom, it's so efficient, you know, it's nice and time efficient, they're probably not going to go back to face-to-face meetings. I've got to say, I can't wait to go back to face-to-face meetings, because it's like you say, you know, I hug most of my clients. I actually have all my meetings at my client's house. So I go around and I'll have a look around and say, oh, well, I like what you've done to the kitchen. Oh, I see, you know, you bought a new settee. And actually, we spend a lot of time having those conversations. You know, my clients are not technical. They don't want to know the ins and outs of anything technical. What they want to know is, I'm going to do a really good job for them. And it's that whole know, like, and trust. And that's how we form that relationship, by me looking around their house and commenting on, oh, doesn't your kitchen look lovely? And things like that. So it is much harder over Zoom, I think. And Zoom feels a little bit clinical based on the meetings I would like to have. I think if, as an advisor and your client, you like nice, efficient, let's get through all our points, let's do it as quickly as possible because we haven't got lots of time, well, Zoom is great. But actually, when it's all about, well, let's sit down and have a nice chat, and oh, let me look, oh, that's a nice picture of your granddaughter, and etc., it's just harder on Zoom. But like I say, compared to if we were using a phone, well, of course, Zoom is great because at least you can see one another.
What about new clients? Are you finding it? Are you looking for new clients at the moment? Have you had new clients or prospects approach you because of this period?
Yeah.
Anything unusual?
Well, I don't do an awful lot of new business. So I've got my existing client bank. I don't do a lot of marketing. If clients come to me and they're the right clients, well, then that's fine. I haven't had an awful lot of inquiries recently. I think a lot of that may well be, you know, if you think about it, do you want to start doing anything about divorce when you're in the middle of lockdown and you're living with your spouse and you're spending probably 24 hours a day in the house together? Probably not a great time to start doing anything about divorce. Sadly, I think after this, the divorce rate is going to spike, because a lot of couples who get on because one spouse is out of the house all day, all of a sudden when you're both in the house, it's going to be a lot trickier. But actually what I've decided to do, I'm just introducing a new service because I've had a number of queries from, well, I'll give you an example. One lady contacted me through LinkedIn. I don't know her, I'm not connected with her. And she said to me, I'm working with an advisor. She's age 62, so at 62, she's probably thinking about retirement. She said, I'm age 62, my portfolio's lost a lot of money, of course, It has. It said, I feel really uncomfortable. I don't like taking risk. My advisors told me I don't need to do anything, stay where I am, and I'm not happy with this. I'm looking for a new advisor. Would you be interested in talking to me? And I went back to her and said, actually, my advice to my clients is not to do anything, because we've got a long-term plan in place. And just because all this is happening now doesn't mean that our plan isn't correct. And I sent her some information that I'd sent to my clients as to why I said this. Now, of course, I don't know her situation. And I said to her, don't look to change your advisor because of the advice you've been given, because actually it may be the advice that all advisors are going to give you. But I do think there's an issue going on there, that she was very concerned and the advisor didn't do anything, or didn't do enough to help her. And I think that's poor, that she then went looking for other people, because it was a he, because she told me he did not do enough to talk to her and say, look, this is why I'm making the suggestion to not do anything. So I am offering a one-off service for people, for the likes of her and some other queries I've had along that line. And I don't normally do one-off transactional business. That's not my model. But I thought there's probably a need for it at the minute. Clients who are using maybe financial advisors who don't do financial planning, or people who are doing their own investments. I've got to say, that's not really my client bank, but just in case someone was interested, playing the stock market. But again, there's no financial planning going on. I'm offering a one-off audit type service, which is, let's have a look at where you are, what it is you'd like to achieve, and let's just see whether you look as though you're on track for it. Now, of course, financial planning isn't a one-off. You can't do it once and decide that's it. But I thought, just to give them an idea as to whether things looked okay, and particularly for, you know, the likes of someone who's 62, maybe wanting to retire pretty soon, it's to look at, well, are you on track after what's happened in the market? And of course, you've lost quite a chunk of money from your portfolio. Or in fact, someone else has mentioned to me as well, people working, you know, maybe full-time, very stressful job, are thinking now that they want to cut back. So again, that would all be part of it. You know, let's have a look. If you either you stop work now, or you go down to, I don't know, 3 days a week, or whatever it is, are you still going to be able to achieve what it is you'd like to?
I think that's a brilliant proposition, actually, because
thank you. It feels right for now, and I'm not sure how long I'll do it for, but I just thought, I felt huge sympathy for this lady who was paying an advisor. I've got no idea what she was paying him, but then she came to me to say she wasn't happy, and I thought, well, that's just not right. And you know, the advice to stay as you are is probably the right advice, but he needed to have given her a lot more reassurance than he did.
Yeah, and education.
Exactly. And it's not good enough. And I think this is all part of, you know, understanding your clients, particularly women. You know, women, as a general rule, have got a much bigger emotional size type in their brain than logical. You know, it is the opposite to men. It's not enough to just say to these clients, oh, look, it's okay, the markets go up and down, don't worry about it. You know, actually, the first thing you have to do is say, yeah, it's tough. It is really tough. And this is tough for all of us. And actually, when the client knows you're listening to them, then you can go into the whole logic. Oh, look, there's a bull and bear chart and it goes up and down and this is what's happening. But the first thing you have to do is just connect with your client and say, I really understand where you're coming from. Yeah, it's a tricky time. And actually, I had a really nice example of that happening to me. That in the same way that I've got my clients on the list and they get their reviews whenever it is, my name is on that list as well. So that my portfolio gets looked at. And my admin assistant sent me mine. And this was, oh yeah, it was in March, because I wanted to see before the year end, do I need to do anything? And my first thought was, oh, there's an error somewhere, because I looked at the number, the value, and I thought, that's not right. And that was my initial thought, oh, there's an error in this report, until I sat down to look at it. And then I thought, actually, it's not an error, it's because the market has fallen. And I did have that real period of, oh my goodness, what's happened to my money? And I'm really glad I did, because, you know, then I went into the logic side. Oh, I know the market goes up and down. I know it's, I'm going to assume it will all be okay. But I did experience that horrible, sick feeling of what's happened to my money. And so I'm glad I did, because it makes me realize how awful it is for your clients when they're seeing that, and they don't have that knowledge you've got for them to think, oh, I'm sure I'm going to be okay at the end of this.
That's brilliant, Mary. Are you
Yeah,
doing videos or webinars or anything for your clients?
No, I haven't. It's on my list, like lots of things on my list. I did contact all my clients from very early on. As soon as the market started dropping, well, this was early March, I contacted everybody to say, you know, don't worry, we've got a long-term plan, and you know, the whole usual. I was contacting clients through March and the beginning of April, probably about twice a week, just because I wanted them to know, look, I'm here, and if you've got a problem, I'm looking after you. And I sent them a lot of information, said, look, if anybody wants to talk to me, you know, let's arrange to talk. But I just faced what I believe were all the real issues they were thinking about. When is this going to end? And of course, I just said, I don't know, you know, but I said, but the issue is nobody knows. So anything that you hear from someone else as to how long it's going to last, it's their guess. So don't listen to whatever timescales anybody else tells you. And then looking at the, you know, and I address the whole issue, is the stock market going to recover? Well, again, I don't know for sure at all. But, you know, I do like that whole bull and bear graph where it shows you going up and down, and it's over the last 100 years or whatever it is, that there are some terrible drops in the market, but actually the market has always recovered. And for anyone who would say, well, this is a pandemic, we've never dealt with a pandemic before, but actually we've never dealt with a lot of things that cause the stock market to fall over. So things like the 2008 crash, the whole year 2000. I think the issue is the reason why the stock market reacts so badly is because it's a one-off and we've never experienced it before. So, you know, my answer was, well, I don't know, because again, that's all to do with guessing the future. But look, here is a graph which shows us all the times it's happened in the past and it has recovered. And, you know, personally, I have no reason to believe that that's not going to happen again. It's just we don't know the timing. So I think all these, you know, tricky subjects which maybe some people avoid, I just came straight out. You know, you just got to come out and say, I don't know. I haven't got a clue. And I can't influence anything to do with the stock market. But what I can do is spend time with you talking about your money and what the impact is on you, and whether we need to cut back on spending or anything. And I think that's what clients need. All the whole horror stories about, you know, the market's dropped by whatever percent. Because again, I sent something which shows the correlation between different asset classes and where there's a negative correlation. And of course, you know, maybe the FTSE had dropped by 15%, whatever the figure was, but your portfolio won't have dropped by 15% because you're not 100% in equities. You've got a lot of bonds going on and everything. So I tried to send stuff which I thought was educational without being over technical. And then I also thought, well, actually, even if they don't read it, they know I'm here and I'm working and I'm trying to look after them. And I also addressed the whole issue again quite early on. I'm a one woman advisor. You know, what happens if people go ill? And I outsource everything, but I sent them a whole list of everybody who I outsource to, so they could look it up on the web, because I outsource my compliance, I outsource my research and my admin and everything. And so I sent them all the details and say, go and look at these firms. You can see they've got more people there. If the person who I deal with gets ill, there's going to be somebody else who takes it up. And then I address the issue, well, actually, what happens if I get ill? And I told them who my locum was, sent them her link, because I said, again, you know, if something happens to me and I'm not around for a long period of time, she's going to be able to look after you if you need to access. Because that's what I thought. I was thinking, what are the sorts of questions that people are going to be panicking about? And I did think a big panic could well be, what happens if something happens to me and they need to get at their money? So I was just very careful from early on to try and send clients things to make them feel comfortable about what's going on.
Have you had any feedback?
I did. I got a lot of feedback right at the beginning about, oh, I'm so delighted you're sending me this. Nobody who had queries, just everyone saying, oh yeah, this is making me feel good. And I sent everyone a little card as well. I got some Wealth for Women, you know, greeting card type things, and all the cards were individual. So even though most of them said exactly the same thing, I did make sure I wrote something on the card that was very specific to that client, so she would know that was a card for her. It wasn't a mass-produced card that everyone got. And I just thought, actually, we all needed looking after very early on, didn't we?
Yeah, no, definitely.
And it was also something I was very aware of, you know, these people that I'm paying money to, what are they doing to help me? And so, for example, Prestwood, you're putting on a whole load of webinars. You know, that was what I wanted. I wanted to know that everybody else that I paid money to and I have a working relationship with was stepping up to try to help. And it was that sort of thing that encouraged me. Well, do you know what? I need to show my clients that I've really got their back and I'm stepping up to look after them.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely think this period has shown who the great planners are and who the worst ones are. And the worst ones are those ones who are afraid to have the discussion about, you know, the market dropping 30%
yes.
or something.
And I saw some
fees, Mary. You know, some planners are worried about having to discuss, you know, the fee aspect, you know, and how can they continue to justify certain fees or percentages and so on when the markets drop so badly. So it's funny, isn't it?
But isn't that interesting? Because if you're worried about your fee because the market's dropping, it says a lot about the service you're offering. Where's financial planning going on? Because financial planning, you know, is not to do with the market. Well, I was going to say it's not to do with the market dropping. It is, because it impacts. But yes, if you're selling your service based on, oh, I can get you a return in excess of the market, you're in trouble now, aren't you? because everybody's return is poor. And I did see, it was in one of the Facebook groups, advisor Facebook groups, there were a lot of people there saying they weren't going to do meetings because they do face-to-face. They weren't going to do them during this lockdown period until later in the year when hopefully they're going back. And I just thought, well, that's ridiculous. This is the time you need to be really on the phone to your client a lot. You know, it's not good enough to just not be there. And they're probably the advisors who are going to lose clients at the end of this, because what service have clients got for them? They haven't got much service at all.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. No, thank you very much, Mary. Thanks for your time, your